for Karen Bukes, who is busy this week with lots of things, including preparing for this Saturday's town meeting. This is show number 359, and we're cable casting this live on October 15th at 8 o'clock at night, and you can call in at area code 508-830-3971. I'd like to thank you so much for tuning in. I'd like to welcome some of our great underwriters. They include Stowell's Cafe in Manomet, Evolution Salon, Brewster PC Solutions and Wrestling Brewster, Triffletti and Costa on Long Pond Road, and underwriter David and Kevin Gallerani, owners of Cape Auto Body Service. Locations are Samoset and Sandwich Streets right here in Plymouth. And as I mentioned at the outset, Karen is not with us. I was actually chatting with her earlier this evening, not about Talk of the Town, but about town meeting. And she has worked with me and Mike Galla and several other people on the electronic voting committee, which will be presented at this Saturday's town meeting with a demonstration of electronic voting. Also, since I'm hosting, I'm going to take this opportunity to once again announce that I will be appointing a charter review committee. The charter review committee will study the town charter. There'll be 9 people, and I'm inviting people now to contact me in order to express your interest in serving on a charter review committee that'll be comprised of 9 people reviewing our town charter. But now let's get right to the show, and this evening we're very fortunate to have a Plymouth resident as our guest. I'd like to welcome Scott Vecchi. Scott, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Scott, thanks for being here. Now, Scott, for people who may not have met you before or know you, tell us a little bit about your background.
My name's Scott Vecchi. I'm from Plymouth. I was born at the Jordan Hospital in Plymouth. There's a joke that my family goes back to 7 of the Pilgrims. So everybody asks Vecchi, which Pilgrim was he? I say he was the cook, the Italian guy. They don't talk about him. But it's actually the Sawyer Bailey side that goes back to the boat. Born and raised in Plymouth. I'm a retired gunnery sergeant in Marines. I'm an Iraq veteran. I've been a Plymouth police officer for the last 17 or so years. I've been a police officer for over 20 years. I'm an attorney. I graduated from UMass Law, passed the bar in 13. And I'm also, I also started Mayflower Taxi in Plymouth again. Mayflower Taxi was a long-running company that had went defunct, and back in 2009 I restarted it. It's an excellent company, provided much-needed transportation in Plymouth, but more importantly, we created some much-needed jobs in a terrible recession.
So Scott, you actually grew up in Plymouth?
Yes, I did.
Attended school in Plymouth?
Yes, I did. Plymouth Carver 87.
Okay. And what did you do after you graduated from Plymouth Carver?
I left for the Marine Corps.
Okay.
I went on a delayed entry. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 17.
Okay.
Actually, I turned 18 years in Camp Pendleton, California, at School of Infantry. Active duty for 4 years. I came back from my 4 years of active duty, and it was the middle of the last recession, 1991. There wasn't very many jobs around here, so I wound up working in the city. I worked for the Suffolk Sheriff, at the time was Sheriff Rufo, and I was a corrections officer. Worked in South Bay, which is the jail right off of Mass Ave, or I should say the House of Correction right off of Mass Ave. Then I was hired by the Transit Police, the MBTA Transit Police. I worked up there for 3 years, and after 3 years, I was fortunate enough to be able to transfer to the Plymouth Police Department, where my dad was a police officer. He passed away when I was a kid, so it was very nice to be able to transfer down to the Plymouth Police Department, follow in my dad's footsteps, and come back to Plymouth.
Interesting you mentioned about your Marine background. If you know, my partner Alan Coster is a former Marine. He was on the Judge Advocate.
Yep.
Did work as a prosecutor.
I see Alan at the luncheon sometimes at the Marine Corps birthday functions.
Yeah, good. And so, do you continue to work for the police?
I do. I am the day shift sergeant.
Okay. And so, what does that mean?
I am the frontline supervisor. I'm in a cruiser. I'm on the road. I respond to calls. But most of what I do revolves around supervising the shift, the officers that are out on patrol assigned to sectors. And if they come into a difficult circumstance or there's a call that requires a supervisor, then I'll respond there and assist them and solve whatever problems they need. There's certain circumstances that always require a supervisor. If there's any type of a death, most overdoses will go to, or any problems at the schools or anything that's any intricate to it, then the supervisor will respond. But I'm in uniform. I'm in a cruiser. I'm on the road.
Okay. And while you were working as a police officer, you attended school?
Yes, I did. I stayed in the Marine Corps Reserve, which is, when I say I'm an Iraq veteran, after 9/11, we were mobilized for the better part of 5 years. I kept coming and going. And I got sick when I was in Iraq in 2006, and I was medevac back. And after I was medevac back, I was retired. But I also went to school, and one of the excellent things, we hear a lot of bad things about the VA, and a lot of things in the paper about when the VA drops the ball. But the VA actually sent me to law school, and when I first got off active duty, I went to Massasoit. After Massasoit, I went to Curry. Then I went to Western New England for my master's degree. I thought that would be the end of my education, a master's degree. But the VA, when I returned from Iraq, sent me to UMass Law, and I graduated from the first public law school in Massachusetts.
Terrific. And do you do any work as a lawyer?
No.
Okay, not yet.
No, I sent in my renewal, my first renewal. So as long as I keep writing a check to the Commonwealth, then I'm active on the bar. But it's one of those things where I like to use my knowledge as an attorney while I'm working. I think it makes me a better police officer. Sure. I think it helps me to respect the rights of people on the street and safeguard their rights a little more because I can see the lawyer aspect to, if I'm doing something, I know how it's going to go in court, and I know the different angles that it would be, I don't want to say attacked, but it would be scrutinized differently by different attorneys. So I try to prepare a better case while respecting the rights of the people. And I'm also one of the union officers, so I use it in my capacities but as far as actually practicing, someday I'm sure I will practice. But for now, I'm just using the education.
So Scott, we have that in common, and also we have in common we have both been past candidates for Plymouth County Commissioner.
Yes, we have.
So tell us a little bit about your current candidacy for a Plymouth County Commissioner.
I'm the Democratic candidate for County Commissioner. I've been hitting the bricks running since January, and there's a running joke going around. I'm like Beetlejuice. If you say my name 3 times, I'll appear, because I am at every function. I run across the county on a regular basis, all the way up to Brockton. Spend a ton of time in Brockton. There's 27 communities that make up the county. It's a huge place to campaign. But I've done my very best to be out every single day. I wake up in the morning and I say, what am I going to do to get elected today? And I'm constantly running across the county.
So for people that are watching that don't know about county commissioners, tell us a little bit about county government.
Well, county government up here is it's an invisible layer of government. And if you're down south or out west, people see county government as the bigger form of government, because down south and out west, they have a lot of what's called unincorporated territory. You would leave the town of Plymouth and drive for 15 or 20 miles before you hit the town of Kingston, and everything in between would belong to the county. So the county down south and out west operates schools, they maintain the roads. They're a larger form of government. But up here in the northeast, because all the towns abut, there's no unincorporated territory. So the county government becomes an invisible form of government that exists in between the local municipalities and the state. Most people don't know we have commissioners. Most people don't know there's 3 of them. And I analogize them to a board of selectmen, because that's more or less what they are. The 3 commissioners are not all elected in the same year. They're offset into years. There's one that's up this year, and I'm the challenger against the Republican incumbent. Then there's another 2 that'll be up in 2 years. Their terms will come up for renewal. And they function just like a board of selectmen. There's a full-time county administrator, like we have a town administrator. The town administrator runs the day-to-day functions of the county. The full-time department heads, I just left both Mr. Buckley, the Register of Deeds, who is doing an outstanding job as the Register of Deeds. His project for the preservation of the colonial documents, I believe that's coming along nicely. They were working on a temperature-controlled vault, humidity-controlled and all that, to maintain the colonial documents, for future generations. Tom O'Brien, Tom O'Brien, the county treasurer, he's doing a great job too. The county retirements outperformed the state, I believe, 6 of the last 7 years. The county retirement system's in great shape. The Mayflower Municipal Health Care has kept premiums down. I don't think they've had a premium increase in a couple of years. And they are the full-time employees of the county. You have the Register of Deeds, the treasurer, and the county administrator, who pretty much run everything, just like you have a town hall. And then the commissioners meet usually every other Thursday at the the county administration building on Oberry Street. And they'll have their meeting and they'll address their agenda that's been set before them, and they're the legislative body that carries out the whatever they're the ones who actually have to vote on all these issues and have to approve them, and just like the selectmen do.
And what about the county sheriff? Is that still
No, the sheriff is part of the state. They removed the sheriff. I believe it was it started in 2009. I think it was official in 2010. The sheriff has very little to do with the county. All his operations have been shifted under the Department of Correction. Back before that, the sheriff was one of the department heads, and it would be, he would fall in line with the Register of Deeds and the treasurer and all that other stuff. But no more. The sheriffs don't belong to the county.
And so the county commissioners meet every other week.
Every other Thursday.
And they do it here in Plymouth.
Yep.
And among other things, they deal with land held by the county.
Yes, and the majority of the land holdings of the county are in the town of Plymouth.
Give us some examples.
The county woodlot, 106 acres right behind your office. One of the bigger parcels of land that belongs to the county. It actually abuts the Eel River watershed. It's a landlocked parcel. Right now, I know the commissioners are currently looking at some issues that they want to do some stuff on the woodlot. They have a solar project that they're trying to do on the woodlot. It's actually, the woodlot has been down at Town Hall and before the ZBA because they were trying to pull gravel out of the woodlot. They have a project and they're working on it, and they're trying to get through the ZBA to pull the gravel out of there. The other big parcel of land they have is the county farm. The county farm, still belongs to the county, but there's a deed restriction where it'll be left for agricultural purposes. Community preservation money bought that deed restriction. I believe it was around 2010 or 12.
And any other properties throughout other parts of the county that you know of?
There are some other parcels. I know there's a 5-acre parcel that abuts the prison in Bridgewater. And there's some small parcels here and there, but the majority of what's left of the county is in Plymouth.
So tell us again a little bit about the area that's covered. I mean, you talked about you've been spending time in Brockton.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about the county.
The county is a big place. It's 27 communities. Obviously, we go from Plymouth all the way along the coast up to Scituate. Then we'll go inland all the way out to Brockton, and then we'll go all the way back down to the coast in Marion and Wareham. And it's a big place.
So for those of you that are watching on the live cable cast on October 15th between 8 and 9 p.m., we're here tonight with Scott Vecchi from Plymouth. He is a candidate for Plymouth County Commissioner, and if you want to call in a question to Scott, you can call at 508-830-3971. Scott, you were talking a little bit about the other county officers. How do the county officers interface with a county commissioner? Do you work closely with the treasurer or the Register of Deeds?
Yes, yeah, you have to, and that's one of the things about an elected official is any good elected official knows that the people who run the day-to-day functions are people that need to be listened to. Again, it's up to the commissioner to make decisions, to carry out the policy. But when you're making policy and you're doing projects, it's always smart to listen to the people, and especially if you have good people. Tom O'Brien, like I said, he's done a great job as treasurer. He's actually on the ballot as well. He's unopposed, I believe. Mr. Buckley isn't on the ballot, but like I said, they know a lot about the county. They've been in county politics for a long time, and to be a good commissioner, you have to listen to and trust your people when you're making these decisions.
And you said there's an executive working for the county commissioners?
There's a county administrator, yes.
And who's that?
Brian, I believe it's Brian McDonald.
Okay. And so...
Sorry, Brian, if I messed up your name.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about what the county administrator would do.
The county administrator functions pretty much like the Plymouth town administrator, like Melissa does. He, if there's an issue, if there's an agenda, he has to prepare the agenda, watch over the day-to-day functions. If there's ongoing projects, if they need to do RFPs, requests for proposals, or they're putting out bids, he would be the person in the office if somebody came in to look at the bids or needed some interaction with the county, he would be the person that they would probably talk to.
And you mentioned before about Tom O'Brien as the treasurer. You also work with the Register of Deeds. Is there revenue that comes from the registry of deeds?
That's actually where most of the county's revenue comes from. Well, most people, when they interact with the county, it's actually through the Register of Deeds. If you buy a house, if you refinance a house, if you do anything with land holdings, you're going to have to go to the Registry of Deeds, or your agent, usually an attorney such as yourself, will send somebody to the Registry of Deeds, and you'll have to file that deed, which I think is about $75 if I'm not mistaken.
It depends. It's more than that. I mean, 75 for a discharge, but 128 for a deed.
Well, 128. I actually just did some house stuff, so I was thinking I was fixated on the discharge.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the monies that they paid for the filing of the deeds at the registry, what most people don't realize is that when they took the sheriffs away from the county, they also changed the funding formula. Because the county used to keep a large portion of that money. Right now, the county only keeps 10.6 cents on the dollar that goes to the Registry of Deeds. There's some legislation that's up on the Hill right now to restructure the funding formula to let the county keep more of its own money. Because that's basically what it is. It is county money. And like I said, when the state restructured and took the sheriff's department, they said, well, if we're taking all these employees and we're taking all this stuff, we're going to take more of your funding. So, like I said, 10.6 cents on the dollar stays in the county. Also, if you looked at your real estate taxes on the bottom, there'd be an assessment for the county. It costs approximately $2.86 per person, or say per taxpayer, to run the county. So basically, for less than a large regular and a donut, that's all it'd cost you for a year to run the county. So one trip to Dunkin's. That's how much you just spent to run the county. And to be honest with you, $2.86 to run an important level of government, I think that's pretty much of a bargain. The county does do a lot of stuff. The county owns 3 courthouses. It has the employees that maintain the courthouses, the custodial staff, the mosquito project. Like I said, the county health care, the Mayflower Municipal Health Care, I should say, and the county retirement, as well as the Registry of Deeds, which employs most of the 96 employees. I believe it's 96, give or take, that they're employees of the county, most of which are at the Registry of Deeds, either in Plymouth or at one of the satellite offices, Brockton and Rockland.
What are the courthouses owned by the county?
They just sold the Plymouth courthouse, so obviously where I believe that passed at the last town meeting.
It did, yes. Yeah.
We're going to $35 million. We're going to make and to be honest with you, that was important because revitalizing downtown Plymouth, I think, is a very important thing. I grew up downtown in the 80s, back when Puritans and Butners and all those, all the quaint little stores, and it was all mom and pop stuff downtown. It was a wonderful place, and I'd love to see that come back. It's thriving fairly well right now, but we'd like to see everything we could do from Plymouth. But they still own the Wareham Courthouse, the Hingham Courthouse, and the Brockton Courthouse. Not the new trial court in Brockton, but the old courthouse.
The old Superior Court.
Yep.
Interesting. So, any plans from the county that you know of in terms of those courthouses?
Right now, there was some. The courthouse rent has always been a sticking point with the state. The state hasn't been as prompt as the county would like in paying of the rent, because that's basically what they do. The county owns the courthouse, it rents it to the trial court, and the trial court pays the rent back to the county. And the county needs that rent because they need to do the upkeep. They need to do some big projects. Hingham just got I believe a new HVAC system that's going to be installed. Wareham needs a good amount of repairs. Brockton is an older building. But as far as like the biggest project right now, I believe is the Hingham Courthouse.
Yeah, I've been on all those courthouses, and it's interesting how quickly time passes. Wareham, when I first practiced, I think was fairly new, but not so new right now.
Time flies.
So tell us a little bit about the retirement system.
The town of Plymouth actually has its own retirement system, and that's the retirement system I'm in. But a lot of the other towns in the county, smaller towns that can't do their own retirement system, it'd be a burden on that town. So the county has the county retirement system that the public employees, the police and fire mostly, or DPW, they'll be into the county retirement system, and it's good for the county. The county exists to help the towns. That's one of the most important things that the county can do, is to help the towns, especially the smaller towns. And the smaller towns who would not be able to manage a public employee retirement system by themselves, they do much better by pooling their resources under the county. And I think it's one of the most important functions that the county provides.
And is there a county advisory board?
Yes, there is.
And what's that?
The commissioners answer to the county advisory board. And the county advisory board is made up by one selectman from each of the communities or a city councilor. The president of the Brockton City Council right now, Bob Sullivan, he represents Brockton on the advisory board. But one selectman from each town and somebody from the city of Brockton. They meet, I believe it's twice a year. They wants to do the budget, and they just had another meeting to go over some other issues. And basically, the commissioners report to them. They're a check and balance, as it were.
Now, have you attended some county commissioner meetings?
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about how a meeting would go.
The meetings are fairly informal. They have to follow the proper rules of procedure, but I haven't been to one in a little while because, when presented with the choice of do you want to sit there and listen to what they're doing or do you want to go out and get elected, the smart person will go out and get elected. But it's important that, that I thought that I should start attending meetings on a fairly regular basis, and I attended, quite a few. Just to see how they function, to see what was on the agenda, to pay attention to what the county was doing, because you can't just get elected to something. You have to have a good idea of what they're doing. And I believe I'm fairly conversant in county government, and I have a good handle on what they are doing right now. There's a good amount of projects that are on the table, most of which are in the town of Plymouth. And to be honest with you, I think that's one of the most important things for us as the town of Plymouth right now. Again, the town of Plymouth isn't more important than any of the other 26 communities, but with most of the projects that they're proposing right now being in the town of Plymouth, and your commissioners aren't from Plymouth, they don't understand Plymouth, they don't understand the background to a lot of things. Again, I was born here. I remember if you walked through the center of town, you knew everybody you saw, or you knew somebody in their family. And I think that when I'm elected, that will help the commissioners, because sometimes if you're unfamiliar with the way things run, and we know that Plymouth's kind of its own special world sometimes, that there are things that are certain ways in Plymouth because they are, and knowing that, instead of ruffling feathers or butting heads, which, to the best of my knowledge and after some conversations with some selectmen, the commissioners seem to be butting heads with the selectmen right now. They have projects that they want to accomplish. They aren't projects that the selectmen think are appropriate as structured for Plymouth. And when I'm elected, I think I'll be able to break that logjam. I think I'll be able to sit down with both the selectmen and my fellow commissioners and resolve these differences and get these projects going for the county, which is important because the county needs to bring in new revenue streams. It needs to be revitalized. It needs to provide more services. And I think, thank you, I think having somebody from Plymouth is kind of what the county needs right now.
And what makes you think that you could do that, be that bridge between a municipal board of selectmen and the county?
I think it's a lot of it is my personality. You don't find much more leadership than a gunnery sergeant of Marines. So I can.
Well, tell me, what's a gunnery sergeant of Marines?
A gunnery sergeant of Marines is what they call an E7. He's in the Marine Corps. The gunny is the person who gets things done. Is basically what it comes down to. And I was that guy. I still am that guy. I know how to give the right kind of leadership, but I also know how to build consensus. And with my personality, I think putting all the parties at a table, you buy a box of Joe, you buy a dozen donuts, you sit down, you say, okay, what don't you like about these projects? And what do you like about these projects? And we sit there and we kick it back and forth until the box of Joe is gone and we have something that we can all live with. I've actually just undertaken one of the most difficult projects that anybody. Have you ever built a house?
Well, I haven't built it myself.
But I mean, have you ever been the person who's? I'm right at the end of building a new house in the town of Plymouth.
Okay.
Probably the most difficult thing in the world, because you have to deal with all the subs, and you have to deal with your spouse. So me and my wife, we basically come down to what do each one of us hate the least. She has her taste and what she wants, and I have my taste and what I want. And granted, it's not always pretty, but the end result is usually pretty good. And I'm building a very nice house. It's actually on the same street I live on now in Plymouth. I can throw a big rock and hit the woodlot. It's Gunner's Exchange. You know where that is, right down by your office.
Yeah, right near.
So building consensus, and what's one of the hardest things to do, build consensus with your spouse, is something that I've been doing for the last, I think, about 8 months. And I think that's something that everybody hopefully will experience at one time in their lifetimes. Having your own home and building a house is a huge milestone, one that we'd like to see available to everybody. But it makes you realize that you don't always get what you want. You know what I mean? But you get what you can live with. And that's a good lesson for government. Because, granted, my wife has very modern, very, I call it science fiction tastes. I have the old school colonial tastes. So if the two of us can compromise.
Very interesting.
And build that consensus and build a beautiful house, which has 23 solar panels on the roof. I love solar. I think that's a good model for government, and that's what the commissioners need to do. We say, okay, look, this is our project. This is what we as the county want to do within the town of Plymouth. And we get everybody on board. And I think that's been kind of the problems that the commissioners and the selectmen have had for a little while, is they don't get everybody on board. Go down to town hall, walk through town hall, talk to engineering, talk to zoning, talk to the building department. Say, hey, look, how does this fit? How is the project going to fit within the town of Plymouth? How is this going to affect the zoning bylaws or whatever other things that we have? We know it's not in a historic district. That's all downtown, but how is this going to fit within the town? Build the consensus. Get the selectmen on board. Say, this is what we want to do. This is where we want to do it. Even if it's, right now they're working on a solar project on the woodlot. They still have to gain access to it. That's a whole separate topic. But you need to have everybody on board. And that's kind of, like right now there's a sticking point with their gravel permit. And I think we didn't build enough of a consensus to let everybody know why the commissioners are trying to pull gravel out of the woodlot, what the end use is going to be, and and if they had everybody on board, I don't think they would be at the sticking point with the ZBA that they are. It's just issues like that, I think, that I bring to the table. I think that knowing the town of Plymouth, knowing the people in the town of Plymouth, knowing the elected officials in the town of Plymouth, I think it's going to be a great bridge between the commissioners and the selectmen.
Good. We're talking with Scott Vecchi. Scott is a Plymouth resident and a candidate for Plymouth County Commissioner. This is Talk of the Town, show number 359, coming to you live on October 15th, cablecast between 8 and 9. You can call in any questions to Scott at 508-830-3971. We want to especially thank Karen Bukes, who is the regular host of Talk of the Town. Also want to thank the crew, Ken Bukes here in the studio, and thank all the viewers for calling in. Again, as I mentioned at the outset, in my role also as moderator, I'm appointing a charter review committee. If anyone would be interested in serving on a charter review committee to review the town charter, you can contact me at my office at 508-746-1464. And if you're interested, we're looking for volunteers to serve on the charter review committee. So speaking of charter review and the town of Plymouth, Scott, and government, have you ever been to a town meeting?
Yes, I have.
And
I used to be a town meeting member from Precinct 5.
which is my precinct, and I knew that. So I thought, so you have some municipal background. You were elected as a town meeting member.
Yes, I was.
So tell us a little bit about that.
I really enjoyed being a town meeting member. It was going and knowing what was going on in my town, I thought was very important. And I've always been a person who wants to participate in the process. And that's kind of what's driven me to run for county commissioner. I want to participate in the process. I want to be involved. I really enjoyed town meeting, especially when you get the big stack of books and you could go through everything and you could look at all the budgets and you knew what was going on around you. And then we go to town meeting and we vote and decide whether or not we want to. Granted, some town meetings, we get wrapped around the axle on. I remember one where we had a lawnmower that was added to the budget and removed from the budget, and then it was reopened for, I think we talked about this lawnmower for about 4 hours. But aside from that, like I said, participating and knowing what's going on and being a productive member of your government, I think, is very important. And that's, if you want to solve the problems, if you want to see these things change, sometimes you have to step up and become actively involved. I mean, you have a long history of serving in our town government.
So you served in town meeting, which is Plymouth's legislature, and it's elected, it's representative. And at the outset, when you described the county commissioners, you talked about them being the legislative body for the county. So
Yes.
how does that relate? How does your experience as a legislator in Plymouth going to serve you as a legislator for the county?
I think it's a big help. Having experience reviewing budgets, having experience, knowing the types of issues that would come before an elected board, I think that's going to benefit me greatly. And I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, the trip to law school kind of cost me a lot of other things. Sometimes in life you have to pick what you want to do. And I went to law school on nights and weekends. It took 5+ years of my life. It was a lot of work. And that kind of boxed me out from a lot of things, including being a town meeting member. It just didn't fit in. And like I said, but I'm done with law school, passed the bar, raring to go, ready to get back involved in politics. And county commissioner is where it's going to be.
Well, and certainly that's a good background also that you bring to the table as a candidate for county commissioner. So, Scott, you've described a little bit about the role of a county commissioner. So, and you talked a little bit about consensus building, but how do you see yourself? What do you see is the way in which you can make a difference if you're elected as county commissioner?
I think I can make a big difference because I have a couple of projects that I want to see enacted. I think they're very reasonable projects, easily done projects. But one of the big things with any level of government is that people have to see it in action. They have to see it function. They have to see it accomplish something good. And I have three projects that I bring to the table, and they're not projects that I just thought up all on my own. They're projects that have been around a little bit. The first one is solar. The county commissioners are already working on solar. I put 23 solar panels on my house, a 7.5 kilowatt photovoltaic array. I'm still working with Revolution, which is Northeast Solar Services. If I get going, I'll sound like a solar salesman. But I want to see probably 30 or so panels on the county commissioners building. I want the county commissioners in their administration building to set the example. And it's really not a big hurdle. That size of an array is probably going to cost about $50,000 to $60,000, which, commissioners only have a $10.7 million budget. But even so, $50,000 or $60,000 isn't an insurmountable, amount of money. There's grants out there. The county has a part-time grant writer. Seek out the solar grants, and let people see that your county's doing something. It's helping the environment. If you know where the county commissioner's building is on Obery Street, it's nice and flat out back. The back of it faces due south, which is the best place for a solar array to face. Again, you're not talking about a huge solar array that's going to be an unsightly eyesore for the neighborhood. You're talking probably 30 panels set up at I believe a 30 to a 45 degree angle, ground mounted. Again, it's one of those things you want to talk to all the neighbors first to make sure nobody's going to get super upset about it. But I think when people see and they'll say, who do those belong to? Oh, they belong to the county. What do they feed into? They feed into the county administration building. Look at the county. It's setting the example. It's leading the way in saving the environment, reducing our dependence on foreign oil, and basically just doing a good thing. And anytime you can help the environment, especially where it doesn't require to cut down old growth trees, is a great thing.
So Scott, we have a caller. So caller, calling in, welcome to Talk of the Town.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Mr. Triffletti. This is County Commission Chairman Daniel Pallotta.
Hello, Daniel. How are you?
How are you?
Good.
I unfortunately can't watch the show, but I did get a text that Scott was on, and I just wanted to reassure the listeners that the County Commission does talk, in fact, to the selectmen, and the County Commission does look into a lot of things, and we'd love to put solar on our building spot, but we can't because the entity is located in the building, and we can't have roof leaks on the emergency center. So there are a lot of things that get miscommunicated during elections, and as the chairman of the commission, I take pride in the fact that we meet regularly with the selectmen. Although we don't agree on everything, Chairman Tavares is as civil as can be, as is Chairman Pallotta. So I want your listeners to know that the commission does function well with the town of Plymouth, but we have a lot of issues that date back 30, 40 years that were not created by our generation that our generation's going to have to solve.
Well, Daniel, let me ask you, do you have a question for Scott Vecchi?
I do. I want to know what Scott Vecchi's position is on the South Street landfill.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. And Scott, you heard the question. What's the answer?
I think the South Street landfill is a very important thing. It's county land that was used by the town of Plymouth as a dump. I remember as a little kid, we'd drive, my dad had this big orange pickup, and you just back your pickup truck and you'd throw everything into it, and then the bulldozer would come and just knock everything down. And it was capped. And to the best of my knowledge, and Chairman Pallotta is probably a lot more well-versed in it than I am, that there's issues on once it's capped and it's 30 years from when the last piece of trash thrown in it, it's you know, whose responsibility it's, whether it's the county land or the town's trash or all that other stuff. And I think the most important thing to do with that is to build a consensus, to work together. And again, it's one thing, you know, we can argue about whose responsibility it is, but if the town and the county could work together and they could do something about it. And I happen to work at the police station, which is right behind it, and we have methane sensors in the basement of the police station. The town has appropriated and is about to dig out the whole backside of the police station because there's issues there. When I started working there, the parking lot was nice and flat, and now there's a big dent in it that one of these days I keep coming out and wondering if we're going to lose a cruiser or it's going to fall into a giant hole into the center of the earth.
Dump or something.
But I think that working together with the town, and there's been some issues. There was a proposal a few years back about using ash to recap it, that the town rejected because of the heavy metals. But I still think that there's a possibility of a consensus where it could, you know, be recapped. It could be straightened out with a joint county and town proposal, and used for some type of a solar farm or something like that. It's important to realize that it's a sticking point for both the town and the county. And I think that working together, that we could do something together. And I believe there was a proposal where the town was going to assist in recapping it. Then there's another issue about the monitoring and who's responsible for the monitoring of the methanes. And again, I'm not anywhere near as conversant on the whole issue as Chairman Pallotta, and I would look to him for a lot of guidance. And I would see myself as a bridge to help resolve those differences with the Board of Selectmen, and to, if necessary, and I believe the town wants to recap the whole thing, and the county, you know, its position is that it's not their responsibility to recap and it's not their responsibility to monitor the methane. But I think that we could come to a reasonable, I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for, is some type of reasonable solution. And I believe there was even the proposal thrown out there of maybe a joint solar farm on top of it that would be split between the county and the town. And again, I'm nowhere near as conversant on the chair as the chairman is. But all I really want to do is, when I'm elected, I want to help Chairman Pallotta.
Chairman Pallotta, any other questions that you have for Scott Vecchi?
Well, I just, what I would like to say is, and I appreciate Scott being open-minded on the issue, but there's 150 moving parts to South Street that involve 26 other towns and a liability that involves Plymouth and the county. And I think that we are looking for solutions that all of it he just said has been proposed and rejected by Plymouth. So I'm hoping when he gets there, he understands that he's representing 26 towns and not the town of Plymouth, and that the the other 25 towns should not shoulder the responsibility of Plymouth. And that's a tough thing to do. It's hard for me to adjust, and I wish him well on what he says he wants to do.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Dan Pallotta, Chair of the Plymouth County Commissioners. And you're watching Talk of the Town. This is show number 359, and you can also call in 508-830-3971 for the live cable cast on Wednesday, October 15th, between the hours of 8 and 9 p.m. So, Scott, the Chairman of the County Commissioners, so you'd be working with two other people.
Yes, I'll be working with Chairman Pilata. Dan, if you're going to call back, they'll move away from the radio a little bit because we're getting a lot of feedback. Who's very conversant. Dan knows a lot, and Dan's right. And Plymouth is not the most important part of the county. It's a large part of the county, and most of the county's resources are within the town of Plymouth. But as a commissioner, I would represent all 27 communities. Just to reiterate that, I see being from Plymouth as a benefit to the commission. As someone who knows the people, who knows the players, I can walk into town hall and pretty much walk into every office there and know everybody in there and have a good conversation with the people. I've been through town hall on numerous other occasions, whether it's working as a police officer, building my house, as the operator of Mayflower Taxi. I've dealt with all these people. So I see it as a benefit. Again, Plymouth isn't more important than any of the other 26 communities, but what we're trying to do is in Plymouth. So I think I see it as a benefit, and I would represent the county well with the knowledge I have as a Plymouth resident.
You mentioned earlier about Mayflower Taxi, and we're doing Talk of the Town being the town of Plymouth. What is Mayflower Taxi?
Mayflower Taxi is a business that right now my wife runs. I started up Mayflower Taxi. It's actually kind of a funny story. My friend Dan used to own Mayflower Taxi. He sold it off when it went defunct. And we used to joke back and forth about him starting the business. And finally, I just got tired of talking about it. I said, look, if you don't start this business back up, I said, I'm going to do it. And he said, fine, go ahead. So I bought 2 old auction police cars, went down to town hall, got a business license, and right now it's a pretty successful business, provides much needed transportation in the town of Plymouth. Little plug for Mayflower Taxi if you need a cab, 508-746-8294, it spells taxi. But it provided me with an education, and an education in the business world. And because there's a lot of things that even a small business, and right now I think we're somewhere around 18 cars. I'd have to count them all up. I lose track because I took a couple off the road. We move cars around every now and again, but it's about 18 cars. We have 8 full-time employees, 10 part-time employees. It's a successful business, but it was an education, because when I sat down in this, I didn't really draw out a plan. I said, I'm going to start a taxi company, and I kind of fiddled my way through it. But we've successfully grown and added cars and added hours of service, and we've been successful in increasing the business and the amount of business we do by at least 10% a month compared to the years prior. And every year we've been building. Government is not a business. Government usually does a pretty poor job of running a business, but having the business education from running one, I could bring those skills to the commissioners and help them just by what I've learned and what I've gone on. And it's a lot of it's regulatory, whether it's dealing with different, you need permits, you need licenses, you need all these other things. It was a very good education, and it's provided me with something to look forward to. I've said I've been a police officer for over 20 years. I got 24 years in the retirement system. I'm getting closer to the end of being a police officer, and that was one of the reasons why I started Mayflower Taxi, is because eventually, I'm going to have to stop being a police officer and go do something else, because it's going to be time to retire. What I want to do is use all that knowledge, use the knowledge I've gained from law school, the knowledge, from, even though I'm not a practicing attorney, that once you're around other attorneys and you start kicking issues around, and whether I'm in court as a police officer and we start discussing different motions and all this other stuff, the legal knowledge is very important. Combined with the business knowledge, I think I'm going to be a great benefit to the commissioners and the county as a whole when they're trying to do these projects and they're trying to improve government. Because as an attorney, what was a large portion of your education? How laws work. We had a whole year of constitutional law just on how the federal government works. And then, there wasn't really a per se class on the Massachusetts, Constitution, but we know that, okay, these are where I go to seek out these answers. And being an attorney is very beneficial just from the knowledge of how our government works, why it works, and how it's supposed to work right. And I think those two things, come together very nicely and will benefit the county greatly.
I've still been intrigued by Mayflower Taxi because it's really invisible to me. I don't know, maybe because I spend so much time up on Long Pond Road in an office, but it sounds like there's a need for it if you got multiple taxis.
Oh yeah, we do quite well. The summer is a very busy time, and we were running, I believe at some points we were running 6 cabs at one time. Going into the winter, we dialed it back. I pulled one of the cabs off the road, so we have 5 taxis. They all don't run at the same time. But on a busy weekend, a holiday weekend, we'll run 4 cabs at a time. And it's much needed because there's a lot of people in the town of Plymouth that need to get around. The Gatra bus doesn't provide the level of service that we'd like it to, just because it's contracted out, and we'd like it to run all the time, but it doesn't. And there's a lot of people that just need to get to work, and they can't afford a car. And we try to be reasonable. The taxi rates are set by the town of Plymouth, which I think is very important because it keeps all the cab companies on a level playing field. But being reliable, being out there, being there all the time, we have people that take us every single day to get to work and to get home. And it's because it's cheaper than registering and insuring a car. And it's kind of funny because as a police officer, you're kind of, you're in one little world. And kind of sometimes, as a profession, we stay in our own little police world, but breaking out of that world and dealing with, and there was a time when I first started, I actually used to drive the taxis. I don't drive taxis anymore. I had a blast driving taxi. It's you watch like some of these TV shows about cash cab and taxi confessions. It's real. It's a riot. It's an absolute riot. But you meet a lot of really nice people, and you talk to people that you otherwise just wouldn't meet. Because they're in a different maybe socioeconomic level than you, or different. They have different jobs or they work different hours, and that was one of the things that I took from it. And like I said, starting the business was a lot of fun. It was a lot of hard work, and we didn't make any money in the beginning, and it took us a long time to make some money. But getting out and meeting people and having a lot of laughs, and anytime you have a job that makes you laugh, that's great. That's great. And then there's nothing funnier than driving through the center of town at 1 o'clock in the morning and watching everybody pile onto the bars and pile in, and I would laugh the whole way to our destination. But
that's when you get a lot of calls when the bars close.
Well, there's the tourist, the tourist industries. We're getting weekend rail service back. I don't know if the listeners know that, but one of the other things is running for office. I've met a whole new group of people, and and like I said, I'm one of those people that I constantly seek out new experiences, and I think it's great when you can open yourselves up and meet. And I've been very fortunate to meet all the state reps, all of our local reps within Plymouth County, and they've done a phenomenal job, and they've pushed weekend rail service, and we're getting it back. I think it's going to start in December. I think it might only be on Saturdays to begin with. But what happens when you get on the train to Plymouth? You get dropped off behind the old Walmart, and you look around and there's nowhere. But if there's a cab sitting there, where do you want to go? And they go right down. They get to see the boat. They get to see the rock, plantation, wherever they need to go. So
that's a good opportunity and need for cabs is right at the rail station.
Oh yeah. It helps out, with the tourist industry of getting the people from the transportation, whether it's the P&B or the train, and getting them downtown to where they can, visit all of our local establishments, spend money in the restaurants, visit the bars, visit the attractions, and then they're going to need to get back to the transportation to get home. And I think that's an important thing that we provide, in addition to just your everyday people that need to get to work. Which there's a lot of it. We have, the mornings are booked out with appointments of people going either to the train to work or going, driving them to wherever their job is. And then getting these people, because that's what we need for downtown, that's what we need for the waterfront. We need to bring these tourists down here to revitalize our economy as well.
You're watching Talk of the Town. This is October 15th. We're here with Scott Vecchi. He is a Plymouth resident and a candidate for Plymouth County Commissioner. You can call in at 508-830-3888 3971. I'm here this evening for the regular host, Karen Bukes. Her husband, Ken, is in the studio here. We thank Ken for all of his hard work. Scott, when we got a caller earlier, you were just in the middle of talking about proposals or things you'd like to do. You started with solar panels, but what else?
Yeah, Dan actually had a good point, and most people don't realize that the Entergy Emergency Operations Center is in the building of that. And just to clarify for Dan and the other listeners, I don't want to put them on the roof. They just built a brand new roof. What I was talking about was a ground-mounted array behind, where there's a big lawn out there. But in addition to that, there's been a proposal on the table for probably I want to say 15 plus, closing on 20 years of a county fire training facility. And I know a lot about it. My dad was a firefighter before he was a police officer. My dad was a firefighter in the town of Duxbury. He was a lieutenant, and he was a permanent intermittent police officers. We used to have part-time police officers, and so we used to go to the firehouse. My family. My grandfather was a fire captain in Plymouth. My great-grandfather was a fire captain in Plymouth. So I have a lot of, and my uncle, if he's watching, I don't know, he was the deputy chief in Plymouth. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you out. So there's a police side, and then there was the fire side. And I know a lot about this proposal from Diana Lothrop. She used to be the county administrator. She passed, I want to say it's probably getting close to a year now. Wonderful lady. But she was adamant on this would be a good thing for the county. And I think it's wood. The county woodlot, which is right behind your office. It's for those listeners who don't know. If you look at the Shops at 5, where Camelot Drive is, where Joe's Windmill is, behind that there's a radio tower. At the base of the radio tower, in that area back there, is the county woodlot. It's 106 acres of landlocked land that belongs to the county. Right now, the county fire chiefs have a license, which is a legal term, for permission to use this until it's revoked. And what they do is the technical rescue crew, mostly it's driven out of car of a fire. If you say a bridge fell on you and you were trapped under the bridge and they needed to rescue you from under that, that's where they practice doing that, with the sawzalls and all that other stuff. Their problem is getting into the woodlot, because it's landlocked and they have permission to cross in certain places. But there's been a proposal to build a county fire training facility, and I sat down with Chief Nord from Duxbury, and he explained the whole proposal to me, and it's a pretty good proposal. It needs a little bit of tweaking. It needs a little more to give reassurances to the commissioners and to the county that the county would be protected. But basically, what the county fire chiefs want is for the land to be gifted to them. And the problem with gifting it to them is that somewhere down the road they could sell it. So as an attorney, you know that we would write a reversion. Should this ever cease to be used for fire training purposes, it would revert back to the county. And that would protect the county, in my opinion. Then the fire chiefs, because the Fire Chiefs Association can carry money from year to year where a regular fire department would have to expend its budget, Chief Nord has told me that he has enough money to build what they call a burn building. It's a big cement building. They throw pallets and hay in it, and they light it on fire, and then they crawl around in it with their Scott packs on, and it helps train the firefighters. And again, they already do fire training there. This would just be an enhanced, and it would be a county fire training facility, which I think would help have people understand that the county is doing something for you. Again, people need to see services. They need to see, the second question after they ask, we have commissioners and what do they do, is what does the county do? And that's a recurrent question that I get. And I think by getting this facility running, again, at almost no cost to the county, it would just cost the county a little bit of land. You'd have to gain access to it. It's a long, complicated story, but there's a couple of proposals to gain access to the woodlot. And then let the fire chiefs build this facility. What most people don't realize is that Entergy, whether you like nuclear power or not, we have a nuclear power plant in the town of Plymouth. They pay $80,000 a year to the Barnstable Fire Training Facility, which is in a state of disrepair. It's kind of, and they have to pay their people to travel all the way down there. So again, I'm not saying we definitely would, but I would definitely be the guy to go down to Entergy, where I happen to know a lot of people who work there, and sit down with those people on the box of Joe and say, hey, what could we do to bring you to the Plymouth County Fire Training Facility and bring that $80,000 they spend a year into the County Fire Training Facility, which would work on a revolving budget. Again, it's a flexible idea. Right now, the county commissioners would need some reassurances. I think maybe an advisory board for that facility with a commissioner and 2 fire chiefs on it might help. But when you bring all this money into the revolving account, because right now, if say Kingston Fire wants to train, they have to drive all the way to Stowe, or they have to drive all the way down to Barnstable to use the fire training facilities if they want to do burn building style training. It costs them $1,500 a day to rent that facility, plus driving a big red truck in either of those directions for an hour plus. So if we had a county facility, and say you operated at a reduced rate for in-county fire, say it's, I'm just throwing numbers around, it's not hard and fast, but say you said $1,000. We're already saving at one of the towns, one of those 27 communities, $500 a day in fire training. Plus you're saving them gas to drive all the way to Stowe or Barnstable. Plus, the maintenance on the big red truck, overtime, all these other issues. You're saving these towns money that would come into the fire training facility in a revolving budget that would operate the facility. And then, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion so far, again, we have to build a consensus and get everybody on board, there would be a surplus, especially if you're bringing energy into the picture. And I would say that, and this is just round numbers being thrown up in the air, you just bring 50% of that surplus back into the county in lieu of taxes. And that way you're making the county money. It's a revenue stream coming into the county. Granted, it would take a little while to get into place. But it would be basically a pilot with payment in lieu of taxes that would bring money into the county, would benefit the county, would benefit all the communities in the county by having them train locally at reduced rates. And I think, again, it's a concept. It's not hard and fast, but I think it would be an excellent proposal. And like I said, I've talked to Chief Norwood a couple of times, and I told Chief Norwood, I said, look, I can't promise you I do this. I said, but I will champion your project. I think that that's an important project. It doesn't cost the county much. It costs the county some land, and that's pretty much all it'll cost the county.
Good. Scott, sounds like a great proposal. When you're not working as a police officer running a taxi service, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Spare time? I've been running the campaign. I don't even remember what spare time is. I have a lot of things that I like to do. Right now, it's basically I like to try and work on my house and get everything going and get that all. We're almost out of time, aren't we?
We're out of time.
All right. If I could just have a
real
minute.
quick.
All right. To find out more about me, please go to my website, voteforvecchi.org, VOTE, the number 4, VECCHI.org. I ask for your vote on November 4th. I think I'll be an outstanding commissioner, and I be one of those elected officials that would remember that they work for you, the people, and be as responsive as I can to the people's needs. But again, I ask for your vote on November 4th. Thank you.
Scott, thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you.
On your candidacy. This completes this edition of Talk of the Town, show number 359. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in. Thanks to Ken Bukes in the studio, to Karen, the regular host and creator and producer of this show. Please join us again. See you in 7 next week. My name is Steve Triffletti. Delighted to be here this evening, and look forward to having you watch in the future. Bye-bye.